Welcome, everybody. It's March the 6th, 2026. This is episode number 87. Who would have thought? Episode number 87 coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we're under a tornado warning. So if something bad happens, I just figured the show must go on. But if anything bad happens and you see me run into a closet, that means that it'll shut off, I'm sure. But thanks for those that have messaged me and wondering if I was okay. Yes, we're good here. Tonight's going to be a very exciting guest. It's going to be Scott Sayers. He's kind of like a big homie to me. I told him that down in San Antonio when I met him last year. In the world of homicide, he's kind of one of those people that I look up to. And I really enjoyed him on the first 48. Very, very intense guy. And I kind of had to twist his arm a little bit to come on here. He's like, man, I don't really do those things. But I was like, dude, you got to come on. You're freaking awesome. And I got to hang out with him and Rick Duggan and Summer Benton down in San Antonio last March. And actually this year, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hello, Phyllis. Thanks for being here. Sun Lover, Kathleen, I appreciate all you guys being here. I really do. Darren's in the house. I appreciate it. But we're going to have him speak again. I'm actually on the committee for the Homicide Investigators of Texas. And we're having him speak this year, and it's going to be really good. And actually, Summer Benton's going to be back too. I'm going to be her handler, basically, and I'll be picking her up from the airport here in a couple of weeks. If you're interested and you're a police officer and you're still looking for something to do, please consider the Homicide Investigators of Texas Conference. That's going to start the weekend of March 22nd, I think, something like that. Just look it up on that website. And if you're looking for a really fun conference, and it's at the Drury Inn and Suites there right off of the Riverwalk, it is awesome. And just to I've had a busy week and a half. About a week and a half ago, I was in Montana, and I was speaking there, which was awesome. And I was speaking at the Montana Narcotics Officers Association in Butte, Montana. And what a great group of people there. I cannot say enough about their hospitality. I want to specifically thank Quentin McClure, who is an officer out in the middle of nowhere, Montana. See, there's Rick and there's Scott and Summer. That was last year in San Antonio, and what a good time we had there. It was fun. And then just a few days ago, I was speaking at the casino in Durant, which is probably a place that Scott's been to because they don't have any casinos in Texas. And it was a lot of fun. And there's the room. That's the size of the room that I was speaking to, and it was almost full. It was a great time. It was the mental health awareness for the Choctaw Nation, and epic venue there in Durant, Oklahoma, and it was great. I got a tag sign from there as well. This is kind of my thing. I like to do that, and it was a good time. I actually met a few people that I think I'm going to have on the show at both of those different locations, and I actually might be making some speaking engagements to Oregon. I know I'm going to be going back to Indianapolis. I'll be in Indianapolis in May and then June. And that's what I like to do. I like to try to score a couple of gigs after every gig that I teach at. So tonight's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll just tell you a little bit about Scott Sayers. His upbringing in the Dallas Police Department was unique in that he came to a squad that had 50 years of experience in homicide investigations. So he was only shown the right way to do things. Plus, at the time, a very experienced district attorney's office. Hang on a minute. Come here, buddy. Shh, Grandpa's on the podcast, all right? All right? Shh, quiet. So basically, plus that at the time, a very experienced district attorney's office who took every case to trial. So he was brought up at an early age with virtually all his cases going to trial. That also created the ability to learn and make each new case better than the last one. And he said, iron sharpens iron, so to speak. And I agree with that. And as I looked through his resume, Scott was on the police department there. He started on the police department back in 1996, where he started in Northwest Patrol, and he went on to street level narcotics, and then he went on to Southeast Patrol, and we'll talk a lot about this. And then he went to robbery, which is a common place for people to go to before they arrive to homicide. And so he retired from there, and he's actually an investigator with Dallas County. and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So I'm very, very lucky to have him willing to come on. Let's bring on Scott Sayers, detective extraordinaire.
How are you doing, Jason?
I'm good, man. I'll tell you, it is really an honor for me. You were a standout detective. I'm really fortunate. I was a fan of the show since it came on in 2004, and watching you and Rick Duggan and the rest of your crew on in the Dallas Homicide Unit, I think you guys really were standouts and very, very impressive as far as how you guys handled yourself on those cases.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I, on the other hand, did not like being a brand new detective on camera with a bunch of guys who could work homicides in their sleep. It was chaotic and stressful. My first days in Homicide were on camera, and so for the first couple shows that I was on, you'd see me kind of in the background, with my mouth shut. That was for a reason, because I didn't want to, say anything dumb. And it took a while before, I got enough experience where I felt comfortable to where they could kind of follow me, and I remember when I first met you, I helped with a case where one of your suspects came down to Dallas, and I knew absolutely nothing about the case. I talked with somebody briefly about it, and I just went in cold and read him his rights and got a confession. And then, I had to come up there and do a couple hearings. And this was before First 48 came to you guys. And y'all had seen me, and we kind of talked about it. And, then I think several years later, they left Dallas and then they came up to y'all. And then y'all, of course, got the same experience that we did. One thing that it did do well for Dallas was it portrayed, the work that we do in a positive way, in a professional way. And it was a pretty unique show in a sense that when we would go out in the street the first couple of years with the cameras, the citizens were really shy about, wanting to be filmed. And then after the popularity of the show started happening, then we would knock on a door and the ladies in the house would be like, oh, they recognize you and say, let me go put my hair on. I mean, so much so that when First 48 went away, one of my old homicide detective buddies, we started not getting a lot of cooperation. And he's like, I'm going to go get a camera and have you pretend like you're a camera guy just so I can get this witness to talk to us.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Hey, how did you, what interested you to become a police officer to begin with?
So nobody in my family was ever an officer, and that's a great question. I know exactly why. I went to a small school in Abilene my first year and a half, and I went because I wanted to play soccer. I was a soccer player, and 1988 was back when they had a lot of D1 soccer schools, and I went to a school called Hardin Simmons, and got on the soccer team. I walked on, and I was a business major because I didn't know what else to do. And my dad was in business. He worked for Southwestern Bell for years. So I just figured, well, I'll just be a business major. And I remember one of my first classes was macroeconomics. And I didn't understand a thing, but I memorized everything. The first test, I got an 88. And I went up to the professor afterwards and I said, hey, where do I go to drop this class and drop my major? And he said, you did really well on the test, you got an 88. And I said, yeah, I know, but I got no interest in what I just put down on paper. And he referred me to a counselor at Hardin Simmons who was a retired cop who taught criminal justice there. And so I went and talked to him just to kind of get some ideas. And he said, what are you interested in? I said, I want a job that's different every day, that I don't have to sit at a desk, that I can be out in the street, out in the world. I don't know what that is, but I want something that's exciting and fun, that's going to pique my interest. I'm probably a little ADD. My wife says I am. I mean, she works for a school district that tests for that, so she would know. And I wanted something that just kept me interested. My whole life, even the odd jobs that I've worked, it's something that I had to really be interested in, or I would just quit the job and I would lose interest. So he suggested, he said, you should look into criminal justice. We've got a major. You can go into all kinds of different things in law enforcement. You can go to a local police department, become a cop. And he explained what cops do. And I remember he said, they give you a uniform, they give you a squad car full of gas with lights and sirens, and they pay you to get in people's business every day. And I was like, oh, okay. How do I do that? And that was my path. And I transferred after Hardin-Simmons. They kind of canned their soccer program. And then Title IX came, where all the boys programs kind of went away. And I transferred to University of North Texas and continued to study criminal justice. And then when I graduated, I interviewed at, a couple of the suburbs, right? Like Richardson, Plano, my hometown, Garland, and it would be 1,500 people applying for one position.
Yeah.
And so, of course, my dad talked to one of the Dallas police officers at Southwestern Bell and said, hey, my son wants to be a cop. What do you recommend? And he said, go to Dallas. They hire 100, 150 cops a year. He'll have plenty of opportunity there. And so I got in with Dallas, and got out of the academy, and it was like right up my alley. Now, early on, I wanted to be narcotics or SWAT, and so I was going to the gym and working out. I want to do something exciting. And I was like, I don't ever want to be a detective. Just like, I didn't want to be in business. I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk, and I didn't really have a concept of the exciting things that they do. And so I got into narcotics, and then when I promoted in Dallas, if you promote, you have to leave the unit that you're in and go back to patrol. Right. And so I became a field trainer for about 6 years. And I remember in patrol, I caught a suspect in a stolen car. And the stolen car was stolen from some young kid who had been murdered, right? And it was up here in Whitewright, Texas, which is just north of me. It's in between kind of Choctaw and where I live. And they'd killed this kid. He had gotten this car. It was a stick shift, and he couldn't drive it real well. So these two suspects saw this kid kind of struggling, and with the car, figuring out how to drive it, and they targeted him. Well, they killed him, threw him in the trunk, took him out in the country and buried him. And then they brought the car, and it was a purple Mustang, like a Prince purple Mustang. They brought the car to Dallas, and we had these bolos, right? And be on the lookout for this purple Mustang. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna find this Mustang. And sure enough, I found the Mustang pulling into a gas station. He saw me pull in, and he ran in the gas station, ran in the bathroom. We kicked the door in, we put him in handcuffs because he's UUMV in a stolen car. And then we take the guy to Capers, and Capers is crimes against persons. I don't know if that's a common kind of term, but any kind of crimes against people, right? And we took the guy to Capers, and this detective named Ken Penrod, in the homicide unit, had already contacted the Whitewright, sheriff's department, and they drove all the way down, and they decided they were going to let Ken talk to this guy. And unbeknownst to me, Ken was like one of the best interrogators that we've ever had, right? He's just one of those guys that could probably also be like a minister, just he's very when he talks, you can just listen to him, right, all day long. He could talk to a tree, and you would sit there and watch him talk to a tree. Well, he starts talking to this kid, and I take my shirt off and my vest off because it's hot, and we're sitting there watching the monitor, and I keep thinking to myself, why is this kid who committed a capital murder talking to this guy? Like, I'm like, shut up. Like, you're going to talk yourself into prison. And when it was all said and done, he had talked to the kid, and the kid basically laid it all out and said, the guy who shot the kid is at a hotel, right now over in West Dallas. And so we set up kind of like a little operation where we got this, suspect to call the shooter and meet him, the ruse, meet him. And he had him at a no-tell motel, at the payphone. We see the guy there, and we all rush up, and we put hands on him, and we take him down there. And he does the same thing to this guy, right? So both of them confessed to capital murder, which is death penalty or life without parole. And at that point, I was like, I think that's what I want to do. I want to talk to people and get them to admit to
Yeah.
these crimes, and and put them in prison, for like it just floored me. I couldn't understand how he did that. And so I started helping a couple guys in robbery where I'd catch their suspects, right? P.E. Jones was in robbery, and I really respected him. He was an old guy, and I would go out and catch the robbery suspects, bringing them just so I could watch them interrogate him, because P.E. Jones was a good interrogator too. And then I finally got a chance to go to robbery, and P.E. Jones is one of the guys who kind of taught me how to talk to people, and he was old school. Like he must have been in his 50s or 60s when he started kind of teaching me. And in Dallas, we had these situations where if patrol officers arrested somebody for robbery, and like all the facts were there and they didn't have to get a detective to get more facts, they would just arrest them cold and put them in jail, right? And so when we would come in the morning, we would have these jail lists of individuals who were arrested for robbery and just put in jail, and they didn't have to contact a detective because it was said and done, like they were caught in the act, right?
Yeah.
So what P.E. Jones would do is he'd say, come on, let's go pull these guys from jail, because I guarantee this ain't their first robbery. And so it was practice. He did that so that I could practice, and I would sit there and I would develop rapport building, right? And I would see P.E. Jones talk to these people and develop trust with them. And before you knew it, I was getting confessions from these guys who had committed robberies. And then, I was telling them, it's like, this ain't your first rodeo. There's others, we don't want to go to jail and go to court, and you seem like you're not being honest and you're not working with us. So, we know we're going to figure out, now that all of my unit knows who you are, we know we're going to figure out these other robberies that you've been in. Right. And so,
Yeah.
and the next thing you know, he's given up 5 more robberies. And it's the best feeling in the world to come out and look at everybody and say, who's got the 7-Eleven over on Harry Hines? Who's got the, and
Yeah.
oh, that's mine, and you just solved 5 of their cases, right?
Yeah. It's freaking awesome.
None of the cases were mine, but I was getting practice, because P.E. Jones was like, if you ever want to aspire to go to homicide, it's like riding a bicycle. You better know how to ride that bicycle, because in robbery, we can talk to a suspect every week, but in homicide, you may talk to a suspect once a month, depending on how many cases you get. So that was where I caught the bug, and basically took a job where I was parked behind a desk that I didn't want to be behind a desk for the next 19 years.
19 years in homicide?
No, 18 in homicide, but I did 11 months in robbery. So I switched with a guy who didn't like homicide. He actually didn't like his sergeant, and I didn't mind his sergeant, so he wanted to swap. So we swapped. I went to homicide. He came back to robbery.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's how I ended up in homicide. And my first day in homicide, they had cameras.
Yeah.
I actually was on a show. I was on an episode when I was in patrol called with First 48. I think it was called Yellow Shoes. It was one of the First 48s. I almost put one of the camera guys through a dumpster, because I came around to assist some homicide detectives, and this camera guy jumped out from a dumpster, and I almost punched him in the face because I thought he was the news. And so they're like, no, he's with us.
Yeah.
He's with us. And I was like, okay. And I went, and it's like, hey, we got this suspect, she's in this apartment. And I went and, I was like, okay, I'll follow y'all. Y'all got a warrant for arrest. Yeah. Okay. Well, she's in this apartment. And I went and kicked the door, and it took me 15 kicks to kick this door. And this door, you could see the lock exposed. It looked like brittle. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. And afterwards, I'm feeling embarrassed, and I'm looking at the camera guy, and I'm like, Holly, man, that's going to be really bad. And he looked at me and said, no, we'll edit that. The show's not that long.
Hey, Scott, Amanda, go ahead and throw up that 3-minute video clip real quick, so to remind everybody about Scott on the job, along with Rick Duggan.
In Dallas, Detective Scott Sayers is working the brutal homicide of 78-year-old Avenel Cowgill.
Y'all thinking that they used that to hit her?
I think she's got more than one thing going on. Looks like a ligature.
Miss Sayers? What'd you find out?
Her skull wasn't fractured at all. She was strangled. I think she was struck repeatedly with whatever blunt object was used.
And then strangled.
Yeah.
I mean, the injuries you're telling me sounds pretty personal to me. Thanks, Doc.
No problem. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Strangled, huh?
Yeah, what does that say to you, Rick?
That's why I'm wondering if it was somebody she knew. You know, that or some deranged psychotic individual.
Yeah.
You ready? You got good information? You got good news?
We'll see. I talked to the ME. She was strangled.
Let's go look at your marks. What we're worried about. So we know it's what?
Hands. This is more brutal than we thought. I mean, somebody that strangles somebody is a different type of suspect altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think they enjoy that. You know, they enjoy physically choking life out of people. And this woman was frail. There was absolutely no reason, which also makes me think that it could have been somebody she knew.
That's possible. I had a cousin. It's been a long time. She was 14, summertime. You know, killed in her house during the summertime. And my uncle comes on and finds my cousin.
Yeah.
It was the same type of deal. Next door neighbor, kind of not all their kid, you know, stabbed her, and so it's like kind of brings back that to me, you know, a little bit about because it like somebody she might have known. So.
Let's mention Rick Duggan real quick. He's what does Rick manufacture right now? He's got that gourmet honey.
Yeah.
But it's not just any honey.
I
It's
don't know
like
what makes it gourmet. It comes out of a bee's behind. It's honey. It's just honey. You know, I saw him today. One of my last cases that I worked went to trial up in Denton County where he's at. And so I got to visit with him a little bit. But yeah, Rick he's great. He was such a great detective. And I just loved working with him and just kind of like what was the greatest thing was being able to be young and just pitch your ideas to these guys, right? And most of the time they weren't wrong in anything that they said to me. You know, it was so great. That was such an impactful case. You know, how it all evolved and how I worked it. You know, it reminded me of my mom because my mom, you know, she's a widow and she lives alone. So it was personal to me, you know, which down the road when I arrested the suspects, you know, I kind of messed up the interview because I took it so personal, you know, like I was angry at the guy. I mean, if you saw that crime scene, you know, you'd be angry at the guy that did it, you know. The older you get, you know, the easier it is to kind of go into a kind of a mood, you know, or just switch your personality to where, you know, you just turn off the angry. But, you know, I had a lot of piss and vinegar in me for a while that you know, just had to get rid of before I could be successful. But yeah, man, that was I'm still in contact with the family to this day. So.
Yeah, I tell you what, there are some of those families that you kind of adopted them and they adopt you right back. And it's kind of cool that we're able, you know, in essence, we're their tour guides and the worst thing that they'll ever go through in their life, honestly, you know, all the way till the end of the trial.
Yeah. You know, like I tell people all the time, you know, all my success that I have in my cases is for something that is like so tragic, you know, like people, it's like, you don't ever want to meet me personally, you know, professionally, because it's probably something really bad has happened,
Yeah, right. Hey, what's the dynamics of the homicide unit specifically? Like, how many detectives? How do you guys come up with the teams, and how often would you guys get a case personally? How often would you get one?
Yeah. So the 18 years I worked there, I got a case a month. So I averaged 12 cases a year for 18 years. I think right now in my bio, I was the lead detective in 176 cases. But I assisted in over 1,000 other ones, with your colleagues. The way we did it when I first got there, we had 4 squads, and they would separate them out by days. We had 3 days off, 4 tens, so 4 days, 10-hour days, and we had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays off, and the other ones had Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays off. And so you worked, your regular days were during the weekend. And we just went by a batting order. So if there were 12 of us, and it was our, time to be up, which was typically 4 days, we would just go in order, And so if you had 8 murders, then that's 8 batters. And then when we switched to Saturday, Sundays off, the whole unit would be in batting order. So if you had 24 detectives, then you would just go through the 24, right? And you got a case, you went down to the bottom. But we averaged in Dallas, I think almost forever, anywhere from 20 to 25 murders a month. So pretty much almost everybody got a case a month. So, it was a conveyor belt, which I think helped me because it pushed me, like I knew if I got a suspect in jail, then week 2, I had my certain things I had to do. Week 3, I had certain things I had to do. And then by week 4, you're getting ready to be on call, get another case. So you pretty much have wrapped your case up and you've sent it to the district attorney's office and you're ready to start fresh with a new one, And then when COVID happened, it changed the dynamic to a way that we work cases that I think is the best way to work a case. And it was a squad base. Because of COVID, they didn't want us to infect the other squads. So Dallas pushed us to libraries because the libraries were all closed during COVID. And so my squad was in the Bachman Lake Library, and that's where we reported for duty. That's where we answered calls and call outs and everything. But we would catch every case that happened for our week. So it was Tuesday at 7 a.m. till the following Tuesday at 7 a.m. You caught everything there. If there were 16 cases, 16 murders, you caught 16 murders that week. And if the next squad was up and they only caught 5 murders, then that's just how it was. And so, but when we went out, everybody. Like we had 2 people that would work evenings, and they would handle all the kind of like the suicides, the unknown cases, the natural cases. And by midnight, they would go home. If they got a murder, then we would all come in and work the murder. So we got a murder, the whole squad would come in. So you would have people that would consistently do the same thing. Somebody would always go to the hospital. Like we had somebody who was good at going to the hospital. They go to the hospital, they get all that done. We had our crime scene guys. They were good at finding witnesses, downloaded video from the street, from houses. So they went, then you had your lead. Your lead was kind of directing everybody, making sure everything is getting done, and then we direct the lead like, okay, we caught a suspect early. They're taking him to headquarters. You need to get to headquarters, start talking to him before he expires, and so there'd be 8 or 9 of us that could work an entire crime scene in about 3-4 hours and come up with a lot of really good evidence and a lot of good theories and thoughts about what happened, and then we all converge back at headquarters and we'd go in the conference room and we'd talk about what we all found. And once everybody talks and we kind of get a lay of the land, then you can start developing your theories or start developing, this is what I need to solve this case. This is the direction that I think it's going. Now, after that first initial, crime scene, the next day, you're pretty much on your own. I worked murders by myself on my own for pretty much 18 years. I mean, didn't go out as a squad to go find witnesses for me. I went out, found witnesses. I went out and got search warrants for, social media, for cell phones. I did all that myself. Once the first initial crime scene was done, but you got a whole lot of evidence, in 3 hours versus before it would be me and maybe 2 other guys on callback. So there'd be the 3 of them working an entire case, and it would take you 12 hours, be exhausted. So that's kind of how the unit works now. They still work as a team concept. So four squads, and each squad works a week, and they catch everything that week.
Wow. And I'll tell you what, when did you leave Homicide?
November 2023.
Okay. So you've experienced some of the technology that we're dealing with now, which is epic.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about committing a murder, ladies and gentlemen, if there's a killer in the house watching us, I'll tell you this much: don't, because you're probably going to get caught. I mean, with flock cameras, they're just that's the best invention that's ever happened in our careers, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. Really, it's killing it.
And when I talk to some of the younger ones, or some of the in my position now, we'll go out and we'll kind of talk with some of the suburbs, just about just basic, homicide, investigation. I talk about, finding evidence is, or solving a case is pretty simple. You try to not, look at the big picture. You can solve a case, by 3 ways. You can get a confession, and that'll solve it for you. You can have a witness, so you find a witness that can solve it, or some form of physical evidence, right? And the physical evidence part is big. Like, there's a ton of stuff, but I always try to simplify it. Say one of those 3 things can solve a case for you. So the only thing that you're trying to do when you go to a crime scene is put somebody or something there, right? Yeah. Somebody may be a witness, somebody may be a suspect, something may be a car. And once you get a car, we've got these people who look at flock and analyze cars, and they are so good at it that they can look and see that the front bumper is cracked. And then they'll look at all the cars that are white Nissan Maximas, and they'll find the one that's got a cracked front bumper that matches the surveillance footage, and they'll ID it. And sure enough, almost all the time they're right. Now you've got the suspect vehicle. And, once you pull that string and you get a little bit of evidence, then it just unfolds and rolls and becomes more and more like an onion. You peel that one thing back, now you got 5 more pieces inside that onion. And each one of those pieces leads to 5 other pieces of evidence. And you just build until it points you in the direction of the suspect.
Yeah. And you guys just looked really good working together. You were always dressed for success, and you just kind of, you made Homicide detectives. I mean, basically you brought it every time. And I really appreciated that. Speaking of, dressing right, Amanda, show that other video clip, would you?
Hey. Yep, this is really happening.
And I like the way these fit too.
Once a year, we have a Assist the Officer golf tournament. Provides financial assistance to officers and their families who have basically been injured or fallen sick. We got over 500 golfers out here today. We have a good time. Oh, yeah. Trying to find my ball. Does this look like poison ivy? Does anybody know what poison ivy looks like? 3 leaves? No, I'm gonna leave that ball. We got crime scene guys that go in there. Golly, they're white. You'd think they would be easy to find against this green background. Oh, here it is. It's right there in front of us. Holy. Look at that.
Whose ball's that?
See that? That's called sweet spot. That's why it went so far. There we go.
Beauty.
If I worked homicides like I play golf, none of my cases would get solved. I'm a mess. Play golf like a hot mess. Muscle man, muscle man, muscle man. Hey, we get a free drop because a squirrel stole my ball. Agreed? All right.
All right, Scott, those pants. Epic, buddy.
Listen, that's my thing. I'm terrible at golf. So my thing is to just show up and dress as most ridiculously as possible and make people laugh.
Love it. Love it, man. That's good. You know, that's one of the things about the first 48, and I want to talk a little bit about that experience for you a little bit deeper than what you were talking about earlier. With that, they used to show a lot of fun videos and stuff that they'd throw up on the internet, which kind of humanized us a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they kind of pulled the plug on that and stopped doing it. I was a little disappointed that they stopped doing that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as far as the dress code goes, Chief Waldrop was our 2-star chief, and when they agreed to let them film, there were a ton of rules, and the rules were you wear a suit and tie. When you're on camera, you wear a suit and tie. Eventually, they let us around the office not have to wear our jackets, but Waldrop, God bless him, I love this man. He's such a great influence as a commander. You know how a commander should be. He said that, you know, we need to look and show that we're professional, whether we are or not. You know, there's some pride in how you dress when you're working the most serious cases. And so I remember one of the detectives through the whole episode, he had a toothpick in his mouth. And when the final, you know, we had Dallas police had final say in editing. Like, those videos would go to Chief Waldrop, and my sergeant, Larry Lewis, would go up there and be like, all right, I'm going to review this video. I hope we all have a job when we come back. And like that one video, he said, no, that video's not, we weren't allowed to smoke. We weren't allowed to chew gum, you know, on camera. He made them take that video and pixelate that toothpick out through the whole episode. And this guy, he just had toothpicks in his mouth all the time. But they had, first 48 had to pixelate that toothpick out because Waldrop said it looked unprofessional.
Now, the experience of being on that show, just to kind of talk about that a little bit, because Dallas is a huge city. And well, first of all, were you a fan of the show before you were even on it?
I never even really saw the show until, you know, as a patrol officer, when I kicked that door and, you know, found this girl in the closet in a box with a bowl of pork and beans, you know, I guess she thought she's going to be in the closet for a while, you know, and then I watched that episode, and I got a lot of relatives up in Canada, and it was fun, you know, telling them, hey, watch this show. That was the only thing I knew on the show. But 2 years later, I'm in Homicide after I kicked that door in, and the same camera guy who filmed me was the camera guy there. So I wasn't a fan of show early because it filmed all my mistakes. And I had a really bad one. I remember I was working with Penrod on this capital murder. It was right after Katrina. And this guy, he was kind of selling weed, and his girlfriend, you know, was living there. And these Katrina evacuees kind of hit the door and tried to rob him. And they slit her throat, and she pretended to be dead and lived. And we do death notification, and our policy is to do it in person, right? And I hadn't done a lot of death notifications at all. And those are probably the hardest thing that you can do. And all I remember was John Davidson was like, don't beat around the bush. Don't tell them they're in a better place. Just tell them, you know, they're dead, you know, just get to it. Right. And so I've got that on my mind. Penrod told me to call this victim's family, right, and find out what their address is. Well, the camera's right there filming me. You know, it likes to film the phone, right, and film us right here. And I got it on speakerphone. And I'm asking for the mom, and the mom, you know, is confirmed she's the mom. She's like, I regret to inform you that, you know, your son is dead. And she just starts screaming on speakerphone. And Ken runs across, is like, ma'am, takes off speakerphone. What's your address? We're on our way out there. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is on camera. I just did death note because I had brain scramble, you know what I mean? So those things were tough to deal with, you know, but once I got a little bit more comfortable, then I realized that the show, like, it really gave a lot of credibility to homicide detectives. Like, we would go into trials, and we would go out into the field to work on cases, and people just had so much respect for us that they knew that we were working hard, and they would cooperate, you know, because of what the show did for us. It boosted, recruiting. I mean, we had rookies that would come in and say, I want to be a homicide detective. It's like, well, you're gonna have to do patrol for a little while first. And
Yeah.
That was my experience. But it was also great, as it allowed us to kind of teach the world. Fletzy came in. That the thing I'm going to talk about in San Antonio is what First 48 created, right? Like, all these old guys were doing these techniques, Jason, and there was no name for them. It was just, old guys talking and being good at it, right? And so Fletzy came in and said, man, that show, y'all really have a lot of great techniques. It's the way you get people to talk to you. And they developed a whole training program, right? And one of the things I'm going to talk about in San Antonio is this case study, where I worked with Penrod, but we got confessions from everybody. And what they did was they went down to the prison after they were convicted, and they talked to the suspects and said, why did you talk to them? What worked? And so I don't
cool.
I don't think a lot of homicide detectives ever get that aspect of it, right? After a trial's done, the prosecution gets to talk to the jury and say what worked, right?
Yeah.
We never get to do that, right? Like, we never get to say what worked, because after they're convicted, they're probably pissed at us, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to get to kind of show down in San Antonio is these clips of the interrogation, and then the suspect in jail talking to Kevin Navarro, about why they talked. So it just enabled us to help other detectives expand their mind, on techniques and ways that you can talk to people,
Yeah. I'll tell you what, there's an interview and interrogation class now that's out there that I'm going to give them a plug because they're freaking awesome. It's the best training I've ever been to in my life. And it's CTK Group. And it's a few Iowa State police officers that put this thing together. And it's the best training I've ever been to in my career. It's just incredible. And so, but anyway, that's good. That's good to hear that, because I'm looking forward to it, to hear what these inmates were saying about that. And that's something we probably should do a lot more of.
Yeah. I love the art of interrogation, and it's not used as much anymore with some of the younger ones, because there's so many other ways to get a suspect, with a cell phone and with a social media and everything, that they just don't really feel like they need it. And the thing that interrogations do is it almost all the time answers the why, right? And for us, that's the hardest thing to answer sometimes, is the why it happened, right?
Yeah.
We can get the right person, but the family wants to know the why. The prosecutor wants to know the why.
Absolutely.
And so,
as a matter of fact, I think that there's a lot of people that we should just probably go back and visit anyway, just to say, hey, of anything else about any other cases or anything along those lines. I've went back a couple of times, and of course the inmates don't appreciate the show like I did. Some of those shows there was one guy in particular. I remember we went to go talk to him about another case, and he had his arm wrapped up, and we're like, hey, what happened there? And he's like, man, every time you show that freaking episode, I'm in here for a fight. So anyway, I was like, hey, I'm sorry about that, dude. Let's I apologize. It's nothing personal, but let's talk about that other case, because you were such a good guy. I was hopeful that you would tell us about this other case. And I told this other detective how you just told the truth and stuff, and you're a good person inside. And he told us about another case. I couldn't believe it. But no, that's cool. So all in all, was the experience with the show, would you consider it just an overwhelming success? And why did they ultimately end up pulling out of Dallas?
Yeah, I think it was ultimately a success. I think they pulled out of Dallas because it ran its course. I mean, we had a changeover of chiefs, right?
Yeah.
And one chief really liked it, and then the next chief just really didn't. It started to kind of become a little difficult in our trials. I remember the studio or A&E who would produce it. They would, after they produced it, they would destroy all their stuff, right? And but before that, the prosecutor and defense would subpoena that. And I remember one time I was sitting on the stand on a case, and the defense attorney had a stack of DVDs that was all raw footage, right? And so can you imagine sitting in a trial on a case where the whole thing has been video recorded? from start to finish, right?
Mhm.
And that's all just the raw footage that they cut out, right? That they didn't put in the
Yeah.
show. And I
Yeah.
remember the defense attorney, they had made a rule in the trial that he could only use the video stuff in there to impeach me on something that I might have said. So for the next 2 hours, it had nothing to do with what I did on the case. It was, didn't you say that the victim was a drug dealing piece of crap? And I was like, on video? And he's like, yes. And I remember it wasn't me, it was another detective who, we're just talking. Hence body cams now. We didn't have body cams back then. Now you got to be real careful about body cams, what you're talking about when you got officers around you, right? And so I knew that it was him and not me, but I was constantly having a battle with this guy and try to remember, did I say that? Did I, and it had nothing to do with the case. They convicted the guy, but those were some of the issues. And it just, I think we did 9 years. They took hiatus in between a couple years. Like we took a year break, then they came back, and a lot of it was kind of contractual and stuff. And then our unit got really, really young. Like all the older guys, they got really young. And I think our command staff was a little nervous about letting some younger ones, have their first, homicide cases on TV. And then, of course, I think in Texas, what happened down in Williamson County on one of the live PD shows, now the law that says you can't film any live PD shows.
Yeah. Unless it's isn't it game wardens? They can still have that, but nothing else. Yeah. And I think that's a real shame, honestly, because, really in reality, I've always been shocked that there's not police departments fighting to be a part of that show, because it's opened up doors. I think that the level of cooperation that we would get from some of the purple areas of the cities with the most crime was unbelievable. I mean, they absolutely, it's like almost like we got a pass, at least here in Tulsa.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we still hate the cops, but you guys are cool, and we appreciate everything you're doing. And
it's like we were part of their gang. Like, really. Like, do you ever feel afraid when you're, detective walking around? It's like, no, not at all. I'll walk around in my suit and tie in the worst parts of Dallas and feel perfectly safe because they all recognize me.
That's right. And it's pretty amazing that what came from that. So it had to have been a difficult decision for you to ultimately retire. How many years did you have on the department when you retired? And
28 and 11 months. So I just call it 29. With all the overtime I work, I just call it 29.
All right. And so when you left the department, I'm sure that's tough, because people don't understand this job unless you really make a conscious effort not to let it be your identity. I mean, it really, especially for you were living at work. You probably saw more of your colleagues than you did your family.
Yeah.
And anyway, so you make a decision to leave from there, and then you end up going to Dallas County to be an investigator.
Yeah.
What was the change in detectives from the time when you got in there? Because it sounds to me like those old guys really took you under their wing and showed you the ropes. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the difference between the detectives when you got in there to when you were leaving? Was there a difference?
No, it was kind of the same. And, first of all, when I retired, I was ready. It didn't bother me at all. I'd done my time. I was ready. 18 years of no sleep was enough for me. But when I left, I had been training a bunch of younger detectives, kind of the way I was trained. I trained them the same way, the same principles, the same, like a lot of young detectives think that, they're supposed to work a case to solve it. And I tell them, you don't get paid to solve cases. You get paid to work cases. If you work them properly, there's a good chance that you'll solve them. If you don't solve them, all you got to do is lay the foundation for some cold case detective down the road that finds that one piece to plug in. And now all the work that you did 10 years ago all fits into the puzzle, and it's perfect. So, and again, that takes away a lot of the pressure on them, right? It's like, just work your case. If you work your case the way it's supposed to be worked, there's a good chance you're going to solve it. So I did a lot of training, but it's so funny because I saw a lot of guys and girls that were kind of like me, cocky, not listening to the old guys. Like I remember Philip Wheeler, he's a young detective at Dallas, and he's a great detective. And I remember saying, listen, Philip, I know you think you're good and everything, but until you testify on the stand on a couple of your cases, you are not a homicide detective. He's like, yeah, I know. And 4 years later, when I was up there, he hit me up one day and he's like, you know what? You're exactly right. What you said, I know I gave you crap about it, but you're exactly right. And what I meant by it was, you know, you have to have your cases tested. And the only way that they're truly tested is in court. And that's where you learn the things that you should have done, you know, the things that's like, I'm going to do that on all of my cases from now on because it was a big issue, right?
Yeah.
It was a big issue. It you know, caused a lot of problems because I didn't do it. And it's kind of like, you know, somebody who cooks or a baker, right? You know, that first cake he made probably wasn't that good, right? Because he used salt instead of sugar. But somebody had to taste it and tell him this sucks. And then he went and he made a better cake. And then the cake got better and better and better. By the time I had 10, 12, 15 years, it got to the point where my cases were so solid that defense attorneys, and I tell all the young guys, if the defense attorneys ask you less than 5 questions on cross, you've done your job, right? My case that I testified on up in Denton County, I was on and off the stand 15 minutes. And the defense attorney asked me 2 questions, and they were silly questions. And so, you know, you don't learn how to find the holes in your case, you know, until they get put on trial. And working at the district attorney's office now, I never had to review anybody's case. I just knew my cases. So I just assumed everybody worked cases like me. Now I'm looking at these young guys' cases that I taught, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, like, why are you doing this? Why are you not doing these things? You know, and my prosecutor continually has to tell me, Scott, not everybody's you. And it's not fair to them because me and you, Jason, we got to add tools to our tool belt a little bit at a time, right? The advent of surveillance footage, social media, cell phone technology, right? CDRs, you know, all a little bit at a time. We were real good at the old school stuff, knocking on doors, getting witnesses, you know, getting confessions. But then we slowly added the scientific things to and the electronic things to our tool belt. We got to do that over 18 years. These homicide detectives who are coming on the street right now, when they're in court, the jury expects them to be me and you right now.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
I hadn't really thought of that. You're right, because I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen that are listening, the amount of information that comes in on a lot of these different electronic search warrants, it's like, first of all, it's like learning Russian. And it's extraordinary the amount of information that you're having to sift through. I think on one side that these young guys today, you know, they were born with the cell phone in their hand, which is different than you and I. I mean, you know, learning these emoji stuff today, geez,
when
that's
did
a
you
whole
get your
other
first
language.
cell phone? When did you get your first cell phone?
That was my own.
Yeah.
It was probably, I got on the department in 98. It was probably 4 years later when I used to go into Quick Trips and call in stolen vehicles. And so about 3 or 4 years after, where I got one that had a plan where you had off hours and a law enforcement discount from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. kind of a deal.
That was my first phone. Yeah, 1996 or 97, I think, is when I got my first phone. Before that, I never had one.
Now
look at how they came about. Like all you could do is call or text, right? And text you had to pay for. And now you can watch TV on it, right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm the reason on the department that we actually moved to smartphones, because I was working a case and the warrants guys were sending back pictures and all this great stuff. I'm using the phone that I had to do JKL. I'm having to do the texting where you're having to go through all 3 letters kind of jazz.
Yeah.
And somebody said something. And I said, hey, that sounds great. You know, I wish we could do that and wish we could see that stuff. And the deputy chief happened to be listening, and he goes, who was that said that? And whoever he was asking, he's like, yeah, that was White. And so he brought us up for a meeting, and he goes, everybody's getting a new cell phone except for Jason. And so but that's how we ended up moving up to technology, because we just didn't. It was the warrants guys that had that, which was pretty amazing. And it was like Blackberries, just like what Steph is saying.
You saw that Blackberry in my hand on that first video that you showed.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're working in the DA's office. You're being an you're an investigator there. I know that you told me about that in San Antonio the last time we were talking about just the reports and stuff like that. How has it been? I mean, did these homicide guys ever come to you and go, hey man, I've got this case? And
Yeah.
And you give me some advice
Oh, yeah.
on how to
Yeah.
do it still
Yeah.
even today.
Well, just like I used to go to my guys, like I would be like,
Yeah.
"Golly, I can't figure this thing out." And I would, I didn't drink coffee ever in my life until I went to Homicide, because I don't know
Yeah.
why, but now I got to have coffee. Yeah, I got to have coffee every day now, because Penrod and Lusty and Eddie Ibarra and Dugan, they would be like, "Come on, let's go get a cup of coffee and talk about it." And we'd go to the break room, we'd sip on coffee, and we would chop it up. This is one thing that I think is lacking with young detectives is we would always, when we finished our case, we would always test our case with my squad, right? We'd sit there and they would play devil's advocate, right? And I would tell them the case and they say, well, Paul Johnson, who's a really good defense attorney in Dallas, still is. Paul Johnson's going to tear your ass up on this, and this. So you better go get those things. Even though you think you don't need them, you better go get these things. And we would test our cases with each other. I don't know that the young guys in Dallas right now are doing a lot of that. Some of the older guys that are there now, 10 years, they don't have to because they've been through all it. But it's always good, even an experienced guy, explaining his case and explaining why he got these two pieces of evidence that prove something that he already proved, right? Like I tell people, I don't mind getting evidence, but I have limited time with, a case a month that I got to work. So if I can't prove this over here and I've proved this over here twice already, I'm not going to keep getting evidence proving the same thing over and over. I'm going to try to prove this because I haven't proved this yet. Right. And then maybe if there's time later, I can go get it. But again, Chief Ron Waldrop, he instilled in all of us, he said, you work cases for appeal. You don't work cases to solve them and you don't work cases to prosecute them. And I was like, what does that mean? What are you talking about to appeal? And it's quite simple to explain is you get as much evidence as you can, because once you get to trial and you think you got a sweetheart case because you got a confession and you got an eyewitness, and then the defense attorney goes over and says, well, the confession is getting thrown out because you did something wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And your eyewitness, well, they died last week. So now you don't have an eyewitness. So I always challenge new detectives, when you get your case filed and it's all good and you think it's wrapped up in a bow and great, take your best piece of evidence away and see if it's still enough to convict. Right.
That's good advice. That's really good advice.
Because once they get convicted, Jason, where do they go? They go to an appeal, right? And what if the appellate throws out your two best pieces of evidence? And because you have these two best things, you didn't go get something that confirmed those things. What the appellate will do is they'll say, okay, with this stuff thrown out, because we threw it out because Sarah did something wrong and it got thrown out, would this case have still been convicted based on what's left? And if the answer is no, then it comes back and you got to retry that thing.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's really good advice. And actually, that should be something that every new detective or all detectives really should pay close attention to, because that's good, really good. They don't
learn that unless they go to trial.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, let me ask you, kind of what I like doing, and I always kind of push the first 48. I was like, hey, listen, you guys really should have like an episode of where are they now, of all these detectives across the board, because I've got favorites, man. I loved Memphis, I loved Dallas, I loved Miami, and some of these cities. I loved Mobile as far as the current city. They were kind of like a mini Tulsa. And so of the more notable ones, and I know that what happened to some of these guys. I know they have all retired, I would assume, at this point, right? Everybody that was on that show.
Yeah.
Those that wouldn't mind, what did they move on to do now? I know that Rick is an investigator at Denton County. Yeah. Kind of your counterpart over there. But what's the other ones doing nowadays?
Well, so Penrod had a brain tumor, and he basically had a stroke, passed out in the office. This San Antonio case study I'm going to do, Kevin Navarro was actually talking to Penrod about teaching it and developing it when Penrod just passed out. Had a tumor in the middle of his brain, the side of his thumb, had it removed. Once it was removed, it affected the part of his brain that affected his speech. So he couldn't really talk very well after that. For a guy who was a brilliant talker, and then he succumbed to the the tumor, years later and passed away. Dan Lusty is retired. Steve David is retired, but he works down in Austin. It's basically a really rich area of Austin. He is a part-time detective, and we've got an old lieutenant in Dallas who's the chief down there in this small little kind of rich area of Austin, who just wanted an experienced detective to work 2 days a week to kind of help his regular detectives. So Steve David retired, moved to Austin, and he works, I think Tuesday, Thursdays, and then he's a marshal on the golf course. Steve David was in that golf video with me. He was the older bald guy with the glasses. So he marshals on the golf course, and he works as a part-time detective twice a week. Eddie Ibarra is still in the department, and he does a lot of teaching and training with a thing called D-Track, and it's a 4 or 5 weeks that we train all of our new detectives in every aspect. And so Eddie teaches interview interrogation and some other aspects of that. Trying to think, Quirk and Palmer went to FLETC and taught human, human behavior is what they called it. They took all our techniques and they put names to it, when Penrod touches somebody, they call it anchoring. We just called it the Penrod touch. You just put your touching, grab it. The feds like to name all the cool techniques that we used. So they both went to FLETC and taught. And
there was Uric. Whatever happened to him?
Uric is still in department. Uric and Tommy Ray, are still in department. They're TFOs now with the FBI. Eddie Lopez works with me at Dallas County DA as an investigator. Randy Laboda retired, moved to Florida, went to law school, and is a prosecutor in one of the counties in Florida. And I think
really,
trying to think of somebody. Dwayne Thompson retired. He works part-time. He works part-time at DSO.
Yeah, I knew Dwayne. I met Dwayne. He used to teach with one of your other Byron Boston, who worked narcotics for you guys.
Yeah.
He had a company called Professional Law Enforcement Training. He still does.
Yeah,
played.
Company. Yeah.
And I've met him a few times, and I met Dwayne a couple of times too as well. It was kind of fun because I saw you guys, and so when we had the opportunity to join the ranks and to be a part of this pretty small fraternity of detectives, to be a part of this, it's been pretty amazing. I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, just kind of bad news, but tomorrow's the last day that they're going to be filming anything on the First 48. That's it. It's over. Did you know that? Did I tell you that? I think I did, Scott. I don't remember. Yeah. So it's over. You're hearing it here. We've kept it pretty quiet, but they're still going to be filming probably some after episodes, I'm thinking. Yeah. But they're pulling all the cameras out of every city tomorrow, March 7th.
Let me ask you this, Jason. That music that they play on First 48, the dun dun,
Yeah.
Does it give you kind of like a weird butterfly feeling? What it does to me is when I hear that tone and that music that First 48 plays, the ominous music, it takes me back to like crime scenes where I was, nervous about my case. Like I don't get anxiety about it, but it gives me some kind of a feeling when I hear that music that First 48 plays.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll tell you what, it's been such an incredible experience just to have people from across the board, from kids that I went to elementary school in California, to take a virtual ride along with me, and just people that I've come to know over my lifetime. And I think it's just been a fun experience to have that memorialized a little bit. I think I'm sure you still tune in and watch yourself on TV every now and then, or somebody catches you. They don't. Well, they really.
I don't ever watch myself, but there's friends of mine who'll be like, they'll send me a picture. They'll be like on a business trip in Omaha or whatever, and they'll send a picture. Oh, look who's on TV. I think I'm getting to a point now where I'm getting so much older that people don't recognize me anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what. JD Baez, who's Dallas SWAT. He's a freaking legend. Yeah. He's a friend, and he's somebody I look up to him in the negotiating world, and he was a guest on the show too. Yeah, he's just a superstar. Guy. Oh, he's great. And JD still gets recognized from that Dallas SWAT show. And and it's crazy. And he said one time I was in Vegas. This is what he was saying. He's like, I was in Vegas and I had a huge beard. I'm smoking a cigar. I'm having some drinks, and some guy just stops in his tracks. And he's like, holy cow, I can't believe it. It's the guy from Dallas SWAT. He's like, are you kidding me? How in the heck did you recognize me? But they'll be showing that stuff for the next 20, 30 years.
I remember the first time it happened to me. I was, at this kind of shopping area where they have restaurants, and my kids were little, right? I think I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? And we're walking through this kind of next to this restaurant, and this person in the restaurant kind of looks at me, and I'm just walking by, and he runs out of the restaurant and just basically accosts me and says, oh my God. And this is when they started kind of doing the reruns. You know what I mean? That's when I really started getting recognized, when it was just a rerun after a rerun. And he just accosted me and he's like, hey, I can't believe, and my wife was like, what is going on? I was like, oh, hey, thank you. I didn't really know how to act. And then a couple of years later, I'm at Disney World with my kids, who are now like 6 and 4, and we're in one of these restaurants to go have lunch with Cinderella or whatever, and it's packed, and there is a guy who is probably 20 yards on the other side of this waiting room, and there's probably 50 people in here waiting for a table, right? And he kind of looks at me, and then he talks to his wife, and he looks at me again, and I'm kind of like, is this guy looking at me? Like, I got my back up against the wall because I'm a cop and I always got my back against the wall. And he's like, oh, from like 20 yards away. And he runs through people, like pushing people. And it was the same thing. He's like, you're that detective, you're Detective Dugan. And I was like, no, I'm Sayers. Because we had like 5 bald guys. People called me Dugan for years.
Okay.
And I would kind of make it a joke about it. It's like, yeah, I'm Dugan. I would kind of act like an ass. Yeah. They could go back and say, that Dugan guy's a real asshole.
Hey, I hope Rick's going to be down there in San Antonio. That'd be great.
He's not. I don't.
Oh no. Okay. Well, anyway, hey, listen, I gotta thank you, man. Bill Hansen from Tucson First 48. He's in here listening to this too, and he was a guest. I've had Summer Benton on. Now I've had you. I was going to have Rick, but he had a computer. He's kind of a computer illiterate. He's not.
That's great.
But he's got to come on someday. But I mean, I can't thank you enough, Scott. You've been an absolute pleasure to have on, ladies and gentlemen. It is great. Is this your first podcast ever?
Yes.
Even better. I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you're bummed out about the First 48. I'm reading the comments over here. But you know what? All you got to do is subscribe to this channel. Remember to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, because I'm still going to have other detectives on. I'm thinking about getting somebody on from Cleveland, and maybe Joe Shalacy from Miami. He actually lives up in Wichita. I'll be speaking up in Wichita, so I'll have to find somebody to get a hold of him.
Shalacy's a trip. He's a character.
Have you met him?
No,
he was intense, man. He was intense for sure. Yeah. Hey, by the way, now, all right, so you're speaking down in San Antonio, just real quick. If somebody wants, I know you're on LinkedIn, so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they can certainly get a hold of you on there. Do you normally speak? Is that something, if somebody's looking for a speaker somewhere, do you have case studies and stuff like that you have ready to go?
I'm just starting to kind of like, I didn't really have a lot of time in Homicide to do them, but at the district attorney's office, they kind of like me teaching, and so I kind of do a homicide class. I haven't really done a lot of case studies, but I've developed a couple of case studies in my teaching, and the people I teach, they really like case studies. So what I'm going to start doing is some case studies, because I think it's just the best way to teach people. Like, you're actually talking about a case, and you can usually pull 3-4 things out of there that you didn't know you could do. You know what I mean? And so I'm slowly going to start developing more case studies. Like I've got a case that I worked where this was a serial shooter. He killed 3 people in Dallas. He killed a guy up in Salina, and he shot 4 other people, like in a span of like a week or two. You know what I mean? And it was, 4 different cities, 3 different counties, ATF, U.S. Marshals. We were all hunting this guy down, right, and trying to get him before a panic went out. So I've kind of got a little bit of a mini case study. Cool. I'm just not. I've never developed one, so I'm kind of new at it. I've seen a bunch of them, but putting them together, I'm kind of new at. I'm getting a little better at it, but I'm gonna
Well, good.
put case studies together.
Yeah. If you need any help with it, you can always reach out. And I'm going to be speaking in North Carolina at the Homicide Investigator Conference. So get one of those together, and I'm going to pass your name along to them. And maybe you can go to a couple of conferences out in North Carolina. They're awesome. I'm putting in a plug for them too. Their conference is in April. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're a homicide guy or you're a crime scene or something along those lines, an investigator, you should check that out as well. Scott, you're the freaking bomb, dude. I really do respect you, and I'm looking for drinks on me down in the hospitality room. And if you need anything, since I'm the low man on the totem
drinks
pole,
are free in the hospitality room.
That's right. I know, but yeah, you're good. Yeah, good. But anyway, it's going to be great to see you in a couple of weeks. And if you need anything while you're down there, don't hesitate, because I'm the low man on the totem pole. In fact, that's a big deal, dude. I'm an Okie, and they've got me a part of that organization on that level. That's pretty cool. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
but
I can't wait.
Hey, listen. So LinkedIn's probably a good way to get a hold of you. Is unless you wanted to give out any other kind of a way to get a hold of you. So you certainly are welcome to give it out an email if you want to, but you can keep it to LinkedIn if you want. If somebody's interested in speaking to you about anything, is there anything? Did you want to leave an email? If you will throw it up there.
My LinkedIn is fine. Yeah, I've got LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest one. I still try to hide myself from, potential, suspects who are still pissed at me about putting them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Anything else you want to leave the viewers with? This is seen throughout the world, by the way, Scott. This is a big deal. This is, by the way, what did you think of that intro music? Pretty awesome, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very Red Bull. You should get Red Bull as a sponsor. No, I appreciate, I appreciate people who take an interest in it, and just want everybody to know that, being a career detective is something that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a sergeant or lieutenant promote. I really, being a detective is the first time in law enforcement where I felt like I was actually making a difference. You know what I mean? Versus just answering one call after another. And so we've got a difficult job. We do our best. And, we're always teaching each other, because that's the thing about law enforcement. Law enforcement is the one career where you learn by doing.
That's right. That's right. I think that's great advice. Don't click off here, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, I say this every week. This show is not a show without you. I really do appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. And I need that, because it just helps with the algorithm, etc. And it just is important, and it makes me feel good that people are tuning in. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on TikTok. As a matter of fact, I threw some TikTok videos up. Nothing stupid, Scott. It's just stuff about where my travels were, because it helps with getting gigs. It helps with my teaching gigs, believe it or not. Yeah. And so check out my TikTok. Follow me there. Don't forget about the Homicide Investigators of Texas conference. And that hotel is awesome. And you're going to see what kind of awesome it is, Scott, when we give you one of those suites as a speaker. It's nice. I'm telling you, man, they set you up good there, especially as a speaker. And like I said, we will hang out together and have fun. I appreciate you being here. I know your time is very valuable. Don't click off. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, I haven't decided yet who it's going to be, but it's going to be something good. And in the very near future, in the next week or two, I might even air it when we're in San Antonio. John Bueller from the Lacey Peterson case, the homicide detective that worked that case. He's going to come on. Great guy. I love the guy. He's going to be great. And I can't thank you enough, man. You're a consummate professional, and I appreciate you being here. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, take us out, Amanda.